Now, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders is getting a little bit of pushback on social media for a tweet about MLK Jr. Day. Now, she tweeted earlier that the U.S. honors King, quote, a great American who gave his life to right the wrong of racial inequality. Our country is better thanks to his inspiration and sacrifice. Okay, look, taken together, that's a nice message. However, a lot of people on social media pointed out something a little strange in that sentence, especially the gave his life portion. He gave his life? No. He was assassinated by James Earl Ray. You may want to delete that. Try again. Again, I don't disagree with your message, but maybe you might want to double check. Now, of course, social media decided to have a little fun with this. Corey Provost, a district leader for New York's 58th Assembly District, said, apparently MLK volunteered to be murdered. Activist Rabia Oshadri says, Martin Luther King would have fought with every drop of blood in his body against you and your overlord. So already these are great tweets. There's more. Justin Baronia says, he was murdered, Sarah. Geek Girl Diva said, today we honor a man who was killed for speaking truth to power and encouraging others to believe in a better and more equal world. Fixed it for you. Perfect. Great. Moving on. Monique Judge says he didn't give his life, you bird. I don't know what that means. It was taken from him by a white racist. Shut up. Love it. Free Mumia says, gave his life is a weird way to write, murdered by a white supremacist in coordination with the feds. Hey, look, I was talking about the FBI in the last story. The FBI was not a fan of Martin Luther King Jr. In fact, they basically tried to get him to kill himself. So that's how much of a thorn in the side he was to the FBI. Now, finally, we have Wajahat Ali, who said, quote, he was assassinated by a racist, and if he were alive today, you would have both sided him, but sure. Oh, I love that. That tweet. Perfect. Because we know they would have. Let's be honest. They don't like, especially conservatives. I love how conservatives like to, one, whitewash him, and then attempt to co-opt him for their own gain. Like, you can't do that. MLK was a radical. And by the way, if you're a centrist, if you're an establishment Democrat, you can't claim him either. Sorry, Kamala Harris, you are not radical enough for Martin Luther King Jr. And let me show you why. He criticized not just racism. Of course, he's mainly famous for criticizing, obviously, racism and fighting against that, but also was in favor of equality, not just for the black man, but for the poor white man, too. Because without economic equality, you can't have racial equality. In fact, he criticized capitalism as an economic system, referred to as a system of exploitation. And he basically said, look, if it were the choice between being known as a capitalist and a democratic socialist, I would be a democratic socialist. That would be my label. Now, who else labels themselves a democratic socialist? Oh, right. AOC and Bernie Sanders. So if you look at how people, both right and center, are treating Bernie Sanders and AOC, telling AOC to sit down and shut up. There was a so-called comedian that was out there slamming Bernie Sanders. Oh, he needs to just go away. Just go away. Well, you would be doing that to Martin Luther King Jr. as well, because that's who they are. AOC and Sanders are more aligned with MLK Jr. than people like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. Let's just be honest about that. That's how they would treat him. And again, MLK knew this. And in fact, when he was in jail, he penned this letter about how he was so upset with not just, obviously, white racists, but with white moderates. In fact, he said, "First, I must confess that over the past few years, I've been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached a regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block is his stride towards freedom. In his stride towards freedom, is not the white citizen counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice." Kamala Harris is a cop, by the way. "Who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. Who constantly says, 'I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action.' Who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom. Who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a, quote, more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection." That is Martin Luther King Jr. talking about the white moderate. And look, Sarah Sanders is obviously no white moderate. She is a member of the right wing. And her, along with the center, don't understand for what MLK, in her words, gave his life for, or was more accurately murdered for. Again, he was assassinated as he was going to give a speech to the sanitation workers on their behalf, fighting for economic equality and justice, and not just racial justice. And they always leave that part out. But those two things, they go hand in hand. They are linked together. And the people who misstate that, and the people who dismiss that and don't understand that, they're no friends of MLK and are trying to use his legacy for their own gain. Now, as far as the right wing, I think that he would be fighting against people like Huckabee Sanders and their consistent lying and their consistent right-wing views. And so, again, what they believe in and what he believes in stand in complete opposition to each other. And let's not forget that. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.